systems need less time to see an impact. Maybe you're not going to see it 10 minutes after, you'd see it 1 minute after. So there's mixed data from a lot of different areas that kind of points us, in one direction or another. Right now, we kind of think this is a good place to start. But I think it's just something that we have to do empirical work on. Like, measuring this outcome is a challenging thing.
Okay, I have to run.
So thank you for the presentation, super interesting. And I was wondering if you managed to capture some sort of bias from your research subjects, since they know that they're being presented with AI video compositions. I was wondering if you managed to capture something like maybe this maybe this works for something created in AI, but maybe something done by humans create a different kind of response.
Yeah.
And I ask this because this seems to be like an AI aesthetic in a sense that has been now all over the web and social media and etc. It sounds super nice. Thank you.
Yeah, thanks for the question. We actually didn't tell people we were going to show them AI-generated videos. We just said we're going to show you a video. But people did comment afterwards, and the people who commented, "Why would you show me this AI crap?" they were the ones who didn't like the experience. Some people were like, "Wow, AI is so cool." So I think I would guess, there's a lot of psychology to unpack there. Some of it's aesthetic preference. Some of it is mistrust in AI, or why are you doing this? Which is also a question that I feel like we should talk about and should answer. Here, we're not using AI just for the sake of AI. We really think that this is a case where, because people habituate to these kinds of interventions, you want something that can generate novel, even hallucinatory things, the things AI is good at, that are sort of features and not bugs. But there is a limit, and we have to be smart about that. I think we're working in measures about people's familiarity and trust in AI, and I'm guessing those kinds of things will mediate the effect. But no, we didn't tell them.
So very interesting work and very interesting video. I'm just wondering if you can share some insights about how different topics works, because I see like in your results the effects are not consistent. Just like how.
Yeah. Thank you. There's a lot of variance, and part of the next steps will be figuring out how much of that is due to the video topics and people's response to them, how much of it is due to the success of generating a video or a narrative consistent with that topic. I mean, this is not automated at this point. This is very human in the loop, where if I generate a narrative and then generate a video, I have to hope that the video isn't terrible, and go through and try to get videos that have they don't have weird things in them or that kind of stuff. So eventually we want to get out of that. The other thing, I think it's a lot of personal preference. So, I've showed this to a lot of different people, including our subjects or participants, and somebody will say, "I think this is interesting, but I really don't like magic stories. Or I hate this visual style. Like, why don't you show me anime visual style?" So the other piece is going to be figuring out what kind of the warm start parameters are for this. That if you have a couple of things about a person's, like they really hate art that looks like this, or they really like something, that would help us not randomly initialize the generative processes.
So, beautiful work. It seems to me there are two different types of events here, right? There's the object losing form, and there is a new form being discovered, right? And I think each of them might have different effect on the emotional state, or I think in the original work of E.T. they look at eye tracking, but here maybe it's in the same location, so you can maybe look at the eye pupil expansion or other physiological reactions.
Yeah, thank you. I appreciate that comment. And in fact, our desired state of this is not that it would be a passive experience, but that would actually be guided by the things that people are looking at. And now it's just sort of building up to that. But yeah, the other thing is there's a lot of complexity here. I'm not going through and testing each specific piece of it. And that would maybe be the best way to do the science. But the goal here is to create something that works. So it's not to say we're only targeting this specific thing in this specific way and we can test it. It's more just, we know a lot of things from a lot of different literatures. Can we put them together and try to get something that's maximally likely to work, start there, and then start breaking it apart? So it's a little bit of a different approach to maybe the science that I would have been taught to do originally.
Yeah, just a quick question. There is plans to do a longitudinal study, like, because I expect that the effects of those interventions changes from time to time, so a subject should have different reactions to the system after 2, 3, I don't know how many instances of interaction. So how can we like mediate the system so it's just not like a one use? Yeah.
Yeah, thank you. That's really important, and yeah, it's a moving target. There are so many things that impact whether a system like this, in addition to it working, is able to impact the human, and we'll need to figure out what psychological states or physiological states are most likely to help us predict that or explain any differences. I mean, we have some priors on the kinds of signals we would expect to see from a person to indicate that they were kind of motivationally oriented to this sort of thing or open to it, that would signal that they might be more receptive. So for example, if a person is under high stress, they don't need to see this, right? And so there's also a sense of when do you put this in front of people? And I think it would be something that was, it required agency from the person that they want to engage with this, and that hopefully eventually they could also guide the generative process so that it meets them with whatever they need.
Thank you for the talk, Shabnam. It's very interesting, the topic. I was wondering if there was, during the process, any going to study or seeing artistic experimentations in movies or animation. Like I see like Felix the Cat or Betty Boop and these kind of crazy loopy hallucinations, like, but they were drawn, right? So, but I think they have this history of a long existence, right? I wonder if there was some point this looking back to see in the history of film, for example.
Yeah, thank you for that. We've been inspired by a lot of different kinds of things, including those sorts of animation and film. From a practical perspective, it's more of just a question of, you know, given that we're trying to meet a lot of different goals, what can we do? So there's a tension between what should we generate that feels ethical because it's you know, using a style that's in the public domain versus art that was used without the artist's consent to train the model, and not having the sort of opportunity to fine-tune or retrain a model with the kinds of specific styles. So maybe that's something in the future if we get to a place with this work where it feels really robust and that it meets its potential, that we can collaborate with artists directly to create visual experiences that we think are going to be most salient, like maybe the kinds that you're describing.
So just a quick question. You mentioned that one of the things you were looking at is you didn't want participants to have an expectation of what the video would end at. But there is a surprise in having your expectations violated. So is there something there also you want to look at, that you want to look at maybe surprise in a more global context?
Yeah, that's great. Thank you. Again, there's a question about what the right amount of surprise is. So another literature that I didn't mention here that I think is important to remember is there's a set of work about what people will attend to, and the research pulls out something called the oddball effect, where there's a frequency of like I don't know, the heuristic, it's sort of like 25 to 40% of the time if something happens, it has this oddball characteristic where it's not super frequent, but it's not super rare either. And the things that are super rare are very salient and important, but that also gives you a reason to ignore them because this is something that never happens. And what we want to find whatever that optimum level is to just sort of shake people out of whatever state they're in. It may be that surprise at different levels is important. So in some cases, you might want a more like global surprise versus a more local one. Because we're trying to design something that would meet people in their daily environment, that's why we focused on things that they're likely to see every day that wouldn't be a global surprise, but it would just be consistent with, I'm sitting at my computer, I'm doing something in Photoshop, I have a prior over this glass, what's gonna happen, rather than we're in a sci-fi universe where everything is different, which has a place, but that's just not what we were doing here.
Okay, thank you. I want to do one comment. I'm really sorry for everybody. But how about if you take Salvador Dali watch that are melted and you go and make it right? What's going to happen with your experiment?
So wait, a watch that would melt,
Do you know
like
the Salvador
painting?
Dali melt
yeah.
watching? So
Oh,
that
to
they
go
are
back.
surrealist. So you're confronted to a reality that is not the real
Right.
reality.
Right.
If you go back to the reality, what's going to happen?
I think it's the same principle because especially with that painting, because people are so familiar with it,
Okay.
that they have a prior over what could happen in that universe. So the painting or the clock's unmelting would just be surprising in the way that I described, that it would be inconsistent with the belief that you have about the painting. So I
If
think
you
it would
know
be fine.
Salvador Dali, of course.
Yeah, if you don't, that's another thing. And so there's an important thing in your question about we need to know something about what people's priors are.
Yes, familiarity comes
Familiarity,
first.
yeah.
Okay, thank you very much. It's a
thank-
beautiful, beautiful talk. And for the questions you have done, this is an amazing session. So, guys, now I have to announce the next cultural occasion. We're gonna go to the Casa do Lago. That is in a way between here and the hotel. And Lira, the performer that is gonna play for us, he's gonna play the repertoire that I love the most. Is Hermeto Pascoal. If you don't know about Hermeto Pascoal, it's a very important Brazilian musician, and he does music with anything, almost. I think for me it's also an opportunity because to listen to this kind of music that is not so common. This is a between experimental music and popular music. I don't know how to classify Hermeto. Hermeto is something different. So, and I hope you enjoy it, and we go to the Casa do Lago. It's at 6 o'clock, okay? We are now, what time we are? Okay, we have 1 hour, okay? For the next thing, okay? I invite you, maybe you can stay around and talk to and make some discussions around, but don't lose this opportunity. I wouldn't lose it, okay? Let's see there. Bye-bye, see you there.